service. I would like to start a series of 3. This week and the next 2 will present a theme. We're going to call it Rewriting Sacred Truths. In this series, each week I will give you one sacred truth and explain it, that we are indeed asking you to think about and rewrite. Is it possible to rewrite a truth? I'm going to give you an example in a moment. Rewriting a truth is looking at something in a different way and changing the perception of it. There are so many things on this planet that science thought was absolute, spiritualist thought was absolute, and were considered absolute, unchangeable. It's a I would say a constant that is like it's in cement. It never changes. And then it did. Example after example of how humans stick to something because it seems to be proven and working, and then they discover, oh, there's more to it. Or they discover, oh, there's something different about it that we didn't know, even though it looks the same. Perception is that way, and human thinking is that way. So this is about rewriting truths. Now, there's really 4 that I would like to bring to you, but one is so commonly given by me that I'm going to brush through it and remind you of it and perhaps bring it up again in the next 2 weeks. It's I would call it the basic Kryon information since the beginning, since the early times that I gave my partner channelings to publish. 1993 book, Don't Think Like a Human. It starts the whole premise that God, as you see God, the creative source of the universe, is not a human. And you might say, well, of course, who thinks God is a human? And I will tell you, most of humanity is taught that God somehow is a judgmental, dysfunctional, bad father in the sky. A father, a human thinking father, male, that will watch out and make sure everyone does things correctly or does certain kinds of things according to the doctrines, and if those things are not proper, then judgment follows, and even torture. This is not the creation source energy, dear ones. This is human energy, human thought. You've taken human attributes and put them on the Creator. Do you see this? Doctrine after doctrine has God thinking like a human. Do you really think that's the way it is? Again, I will say it. Do you really think that God will punish all of humanity because one of them made a mistake early on when they were just getting started? And everyone pays the price now, and everyone gets tortured equally unless you do something. That is not the scheme of God. The plan, the scheme, all of that of God is love and compassion and beauty and kindness and benevolence, period. I'm going to say that perhaps in the next 2 weeks. But that is always number 1. For you to understand that creative source that you can call anything you want to, God seems to be the word you've used. But you don't have to use that word. Spirit is a good one because it doesn't have all of the trappings and the perceptions that the doctrines that say God perhaps might. There are other attributes that we're asking you to rewrite. Rewrite sacred truth. And the first of the 3 that we have brought to you before in pieces and parts, I'll now expand upon. Expand upon in a way that perhaps you've heard before in other Kryon channels, but not necessarily exactly like this one. Anyway, you need to be reminded. There are so many things that I offer the rewrite for. Because, dear ones, this is an energy that starts to awaken new kinds of awareness. The kinds of things that are starting to be awakened create new perceptions. It's almost like the light is being turned on in a way on this planet that lets you see through the veil, perhaps even holes in the veil. That veil that you have created, that you say separates you from God, like a wall. Indeed, in the past, it has been like a wall. Lower energy consciousness creates a wall so thick between higher thinking and you that you start to make up things that you think are on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the veil. Most doctrines, dear ones, of this planet were created in those older consciousness energies, doing the best they could to try to understand what that Creator wanted, if you can even use the word wanted. That in itself is a human concept. There's a Creator, there's us. Therefore, that Creator must do this, that, and that. How does the Creator feel? How does the Creator be angry? How does the Creator want this, that? That's all human. Those are all things you'd ask of your parents. Not God. God is. God is love. But there's so much on the other side of the veil that we now start talking to you about, especially in the Circle of 12, where you cross a bridge and you find a multidimensionality that starts to go through the veil, even beyond the veil, and reveal things, mostly about yourself. Number one is revelation about yourself. Something that we have said over and over and over, and now I wish to expand upon it. When you come to this planet and when you are born here and you awaken, your eyes open, you become sentient, aware at whatever level, your Akash awakens, here you are. At that point in time, who are you? And if you follow the lines of thinking of old consciousness, old rules, old doctrines, almost all of them tell you you're unworthy. In addition to that, if you are born to dysfunctional thinking parents, they'll tell you the same. Well, you'll never get here, you'll never do this, sit down, be quiet. And it starts to simply enhance everything that everyone tells you, even about God. You haven't got a chance. It's no wonder that so many humans will grow up fighting the system, believing they're victims of the planet and expecting the worst every single day. Listen, if you think consciousness is energy, what happens to energy that is negative, that paints a picture of bad things happening every day, and you put it out there in front of your path? I'm no good, you might say. Bad things are going to happen eventually. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, as they say. It's good now. Oh, I better enjoy it while I can because it's not going to last, you know. These are energetic thoughts put in the path in front of you, and then you walk through them. You do understand that, don't you? It's not true. None of it is true. When you open your eyes as that infant that you are, right next to your mother, that moment that you arrive, dear ones, and everything starts to function, You are absolutely precious and magnificent. There is no dirt there. You are not born dirty or unworthy. You are seen in the eyes of God as precious, as part of the creation. And yet few believe it. I've chosen that for number one, rewriting a sacred truth. So many sacred truths say that when you arrive on the planet, you're not worthy. So many. That is human thinking, dear ones, from things projected onto God that are human activities, punishment, all of these things. And you will say, well, that came from Scripture. And that came from the whole idea of Adam and Eve's story and all of those things. Let me ask you, do you think the finger of God came down and wrote those scriptures, or did men and women write them? And the answer is all scriptures were written by men and women in an older energy. Some channeled, some not, some guesswork, some on purpose, so that the doctrines fit a concept of a dysfunctional, bad father in the sky. Are you getting this? That's not how it is. None of it. The veil starts to lighten. You're starting to see through the holes in the veil, and you're starting to see clearer. The light is being turned on for you to rewrite some things. Let me give you a quick review of a parable I gave some time ago. This one's a little different. Here's a story about a sightless individual, a man who has no sight and never has had sight. And like so many sightless people, other senses are keen and even developed much higher than a normal human being. Hearing, of course, but touch, feel. Do you ever realize that the talent it would take for any human being to read books by sensing bumps on their finger? What a talent that is. So a sightless person often has touch that is enhanced. This particular sightless person has a wonderful hobby, plays the piano flawlessly, because the sense of touch, they know where all the keys are all the time. They don't have to then fumble around like a sighted person. Their entire life has been one where they exist in one room. That's a metaphor, which is their reality. That's a metaphor. And with touch, they know everything in the room. They even cook for themselves. They have no trouble as long as nothing moves, everything is in the same place, and they are fully functional, sightless people. Welcome to Earth. This is the metaphor of who you are. And you're fine with it. And you've developed ways of figuring out what's here and there. And the parable continues. Suddenly, there is something scientific, perhaps, or not, that allows this sightless person to see dimly, but see. It's not an operation. It's not a medical procedure. It's something else. Perhaps it's even technology. Whatever it is, that person suddenly starts to see light dimly, and they can actually see what's in their room. Up to now, they've only felt what's in their room, and they start to see something that glows. A sightless person cannot see something that glows. It's always been there, and they see. It's not another door. They would have known that. It's an elevator. And they see a control that glows on the elevator. And they push the button that glows. The doors open, and they get in. And then they see all the other buttons that are glowing, and they see floor 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it goes and goes and goes, and that is where they live, and that is their reality. Is this getting you chills yet? Dear ones, as you look through the veil, what you're going to see is an awareness of light. And it's going to show you that your reality is magnificent. You are in a skyscraper, not one room. And in those other levels are all the abilities of magnificence that you have, the talents that you already have, the healing that is yours. This is the reality that's coming for you. This parable we've given before in other ways. But do you see how light would change your perception of a basic truth? That's number 1 of 3 that I'll give you this week, the next one, and the next one. Dear ones, every single one of these enhances you, the human being. It doesn't tell you there's something to do. It offers for you to see how grand you are that you may not have seen before. And so it is.
And very gently, very softly, allow your awareness to move a little more present in your body. Bring your awareness back into the room. And if you've had those beautiful eyes of yours closed throughout that channel, I invite you to open up your eyes. We'll just allow a little more time for those still coming out of that beautiful energy to join us now, for we are moving into the next section where we have an amazing guest joining us this evening.
This is my favorite section.
Yes, I know it is for you. And me
Yes,
too,
right.
because as we hear from all the amazing healers that come onto this show, we expand. We learn things. There's parts of our brain that get access just from the vibration of their knowledge and voice that they're sharing with us.
And I want to share again with the members that these guests are all those that have come along from recommendations. They're not people necessarily that I know, so I get to meet them when you get to meet them and hear all about that which they have to tell us.
Absolutely. And tonight we have Yvette Rose. And Yvette, are you there?
I'm here.
Yay! Wonderful. So Yvette, we want to tell everyone how amazing you are and all about your work.
Now, this is just a preliminary. We do a little bio here for Yvette, and she's going to tell us everything else. But Yvette Rose is the author of 3 books. Her original work, Finding Your Own Voice, relates to her experience in overcoming the trauma of abuse. She's known for writing the book Metaphysical Anatomy Volume 1 and Metaphysical Anatomy Technique, which uses a step-by-step guide identifying the psychosomatic pattern related to, are you ready? 679 medical conditions. I should say that again, 679 medical conditions. That book, I'm quite sure, is quite large.
What an encyclopedia of knowledge,
Yes.
right? Now, these conditions, they can be activated by your circumstances in your present life. It can also be related to your ancestry, conception, what happened in the womb, your birth trauma, childhood, or even your adult life. Now, Yvette's work builds on the existing work from many famous authors, and she's making it much more practical. It's more specific. It's incredibly detailed, and ultimately, for that reason, it's much more effective.
Her philosophy is that we, as the human race, are not destined to live our lives in pain due to past drama or abuse. I'd like to say that about 5 times, because our information and our teaching for years is you're not here to suffer.
Yes.
You know, that's not why we're here. And this is what she teaches, and there's solutions. We suppressed our ability to complete and heal trauma naturally, and as a result, our true identity is influenced by trauma. Now, I'm going to turn it to her in just a moment, but I also know she has a video, and I love the title of it, so I'm going to give it to you, and it says, Why People Don't Heal and What to Do About It. Is that practical enough? So, Yvette, welcome to the show. Please, you can take it from here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you. And I loved how you moved out of the meditation and you talked about expansion and how we all just contribute to life and the vast pieces of information that's just in this pool of this quantum field that we all find ourselves in. And sometimes unbeknownst to us, what our future holds and how we're going to be tapping into that in the information that we can end up tapping into. And that is also basically what happened to my journey. I had no idea that I was going to write this book, Metaphysical Anatomy, that you just talked about here. And I never thought of actually becoming an author. I wanted to become a crime scene investigator. I wanted to become a lawyer to support people who have been treated unfairly during systems and throughout domestic violence, which I didn't realize at the time, which I would have learned later on, that when I tapped into this pool of consciousness, where a big part of my future purpose would be laid out for me, is that roles that I chose for myself as a job back then when I was in my early 20s was an expression of the injustice that I felt in my life, finding the solutions, finding the reasons why certain things happened, to find closure with things that was perhaps left opened. And that was me trying to heal my wounds from the past. And so my life was a complete mess, right? This is why we all come into personal development. There's something in our lives that doesn't work for us. So we start looking for alternative methods because the methods that we're using is just not working. And so when you are in that place of unresourcefulness, that's when you become quite open-minded, more so than what you would have been prior, because clearly you don't have the answers. And that's where I found myself. I found myself on a crossroad where it really was at a point where I was drinking so much, I was smoking so much, I was a workaholic. My whole life was the picture portrayed of someone who was just so trying to numb themselves and not to feel what was going on for me, because my body was trying to say, hey, there's pain here, there's a call to action. But I'm like, I don't want to listen, don't want to feel it, so we suppress it. And so we build our entire life around not feeling. But the more we do that, the deeper we sink into the subconscious old unresolved wounds, and the louder that becomes. And that's exactly where I found myself. And long story short, I was at that crossroad where I decided I'm going to take my life. I'm done. This is now, it's either we live or we fix this, or we end this, because I was that unresourceful. And I even left that morning a message on my manager's phone, and I said, I'm not coming in. Here's all the tasks, what I'm handing over. And I had enough. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. And I remember, and I sat in front of the computer, and I'm thinking, I don't know why I'm sitting here. But there was something that ran through my mind, and I was thinking, listen, but there's other people around me that's happy. What are they doing that I'm not? We're all made up from the same biological makeup. What is it that they're doing that I'm clearly missing here? So that's when my competitive side actually kicked in. And I, funnily enough, believe it or not, I had my shot of vodka because, this was my final drink and my final cigarette. And I'm sitting there in front of the computer, and I typed in how to be happy. Because I'm like, I don't have the answer. Let's ask Google. It sounds funny, but that's actually truly what happened. And I saw crystals, and it's this and it's that and it's angels. And I went from being raised strictly Christian to becoming, of course, the opposite, rebelling, an atheist. And I'm looking at something that's completely the opposite to what I believe in. But I didn't have the answers. I was so unresourceful that I thought, I'm going to do this. I jumped. And I jumped big. And I jumped so much that 3 months later, I quit my office job, and I really got into healing work. I started working on myself. I started seeing improvements, and I started hitting walls. And I realized that I'm not getting to where I needed to be. And so I compiled everything that I've learned. And I started to practice on myself by looking at different segments, sensing and feeling in my body. When I do certain things, I'm like, wow, there was a shift. When I do that, there was a shift. And I started to put pieces together in terms of the emotions that I was working on, the trauma points that I was working on, and then sensing the physical and the emotional shifts within myself. And I thought, this is really interesting. I'm onto something. And so the more I started to practice with clients, the more I started getting really great results. And so I met up with a business partner, and we started to teach my work together. And it did phenomenally good. I mean, we posted a few videos on YouTube. It went viral. 9 months later, we were booked full across the world, and all the events sold out, and just started traveling across the world. And as I was traveling, that's how this book was born, because I started to notice, I'm like, why and how is it that someone from America, completely different background, completely different religious upbringing, childhood trauma, different levels of resilience, DNA lineage has different expressions, environments being, in being shaped in different ways. So the epigenetics is also different. But that person in America, for example, that has cancer on the left breast on a specific side, has the exact same trauma triggers than someone, for example, in Australia. But they're completely unrelated. These two people have no connection to each other. And I thought, this is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so I started to compile all my data, and I got so excited when I finally had everything together. And then I realized, oh, but there's already other books out there that's like this. What's the point of actually publishing the book? And then I got a message, look at the references that's out there and what's missing. What's missing? And I realized it's the trauma points. It's the ancestral history that's also missing. And I thought, perfect. Let me focus then on what's missing. And that is exactly what I did. So this book was actually a clumsy spiral bind manual that I just gave to students because I quite frankly, I couldn't answer everyone's questions. Like,